Hey everybody, welcome back. Michelle and I joining you here on a sunny Sunday on Thanksgiving weekend 2020. Michelle.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
So I'm sure that there's, a lot of different mixed feelings going on out there right now, particularly during the pandemic in regards to your holiday and who you got to spend it with and who you didn't and how many people and just all of it. And it's been a pretty emotional time for everyone. And I think we feel pretty fortunate that we had a small clan here, over the weekend that we got to really treasure time with and be at peace of mind and to just enjoy ourselves in this moment in time. So we feel pretty balanced and relaxed and ready to have some, other kinds of conversations around relationship and stuff that may not be so easy. But I think we're one of the fortunate ones this weekend for sure.
Yeah, we had a really nice little gathering. Heath's friends came down with their 2 kids. My parents came over. Judy was here. We cooked lots of food, hung out, hit the beach.
What do we eat? You want to fill us in on some of the yummies? I mean, why not? It might sound boring, but we might as well paint a picture.
We ate turkey, and I made a prime rib in the sous vide, which is my new favorite thing. We had mashed potatoes, stuffing, sweet potatoes, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, tons of desserts. Judy took over the desserts, ran off to the turkey. We split it all up, so it was definitely easier on everybody. Last year I cooked the whole Thanksgiving.
You sure did, every bit of it. Yeah.
Which was a lot. So it was nice to have some help. But yeah,
it was nice. And then we just got to all kind of hang around and play pool and watch movies and chill out just like everybody else, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this weekend's been very long.
Yeah, it felt that way, didn't it? Yeah, like a really true long weekend.
Whole week.
Yeah, totally. So, we're going to, kick off today's show a little round, as a kind of a progression of our last show that we did together, really exploring the idea of mature love and, all of our experience that we flushed out of that, to realize that, it's a worthy conversation to kind of like continue to explore as to what that looks like and what are some of the obstacles that get in the way of mature love. And, one of the things I really like about talking with you, Michelle, in our personal life, off the microphone, if you will, is just how well read you are. And so I can be sitting around talking about all my theoretical stuff and my opinions or whatever. And often you're able to just, well, that's talked about in this book or that's talked about in this book. And so we were doing, a little conversation prepping up for this over the last week of, and I'm bringing theory and you're bringing some cool experiences from other people and books and literature. And one of them that it mentioned about relationship is that it's, that if you're aiming for a healthy or mature relationship, it's you're aiming for it to be prolonged and joyful. Is that correct? Did I say that right?
Yeah. Prolonged and enjoyed.
And prolonged and enjoyed, right?
Uh-huh.
I mean, that felt very summarized to me, in a sense of. And then, I was just looking, as we were building out some of the Atum stuff, and there was this information that just was sent over by the designer about, how some of the ancient Egyptian beliefs were that, when you left this space, you got to go live permanently in the bliss of your best here, right?
Yeah.
Like this was the place to prove that you could have, your best life, and then you got to have it for eternity. That's what eternity meant to them, was the experience you had here in its fullest fashion and form, and that kind of gives you a reason to go for it here in this lifetime, I think. Yeah,
well, I found that to be a little bit scary, that thing you sent over, that they looked at the afterlife as, basically a mirror image of the life here. So
right,
if your life is not so great and you're like, get me out of here, and then, the trick. Back in the same thing.
Again, maybe worse or off.
Right.
So, it kind of, continually gives me the passion and enjoyment and the commitment to kind of dig my heels in a little bit here and continue to explore, the benefits of, being in a joyful and mature and relationship. And as we talked about, kind of the most obvious thing, I think that everybody who's in any stage of that kind of relationship, if you will, of, from complete dysfunction to a completely joyful relationship, right? That jealousy and trust still can find their way into it, no matter what range you're in. Right?
Yeah.
And that it's kind of universal, if you will.
Yeah, I think trust is a huge thing in a lot of people's relationships. And you and I have had our share of struggles with trust. So I guess that's it's relevant to talk about.
Exactly right. I mean, that's why we're here, right? It's like, yeah, we got to sit down and be raw and be ourselves and say, what are we working on? Right?
Yeah.
We can't assume anybody else can give a shit about what we're talking about if it's not relevant.
Right.
So
Well, we've already
might
proven,
as well go where we're at,
Yeah, that we don't know much. So
exactly. So what a great place for everybody to feel awesome about themselves and go carry on with our story there. So
yeah. I think trust is a good place to start.
Probably for us, yeah. And I just had a meltdown the other day of trust a little bit. You want to give a backstory on that one?
Yeah, you did. And I've had some of my own, but just a weirdly kind of a minor one. We were talking about actually I don't even know how it happened. I had so when you and I just decided to start to actually be in a committed monogamous relationship, we had both been seeing other people. My joke at work is always like, oh, we have this person we're working with, and I'm always, is he single? And everyone's always trying to hook me up and introduce me to people, and people are very bad at it, by the way. Everybody's, oh, I know a person. No, they don't. So right in the very beginning of when we went to Costa Rica and we kind of decided to give it a shot, it was very shortly after, like a week or two, I had a guy that I knew through work ask me on a date. And I'm like, nobody ever, express interest and kind of reach out like, is this okay? And would you be interested? And I immediately sort of just said yes.
Kind of went autopilot.
I did autopilot, right? Because for one, nobody ever asks me out. So I was just like, I'm accustomed to saying yes. I told you before, I used to go on a lot of first dates. I think we should always lean towards, seeing what's out there. And I went on not that many second dates, but I definitely am open to the first date.
Yes, like Alyssa, you share that in common, right?
I think so, yeah. And you just never know until you give somebody a shot. I never had a long list of criteria that somebody had to be a certain height or a certain career or have a certain look.
Which is cool.
Yeah, I was trying to be open-minded to, surprise me. Let me see what you're all about. So, so I kind of just went on autopilot, and I had a little, texting with the guy, and, I shared it with some other people, like my dad and somebody else. And they're like, what are you doing? Like, that's so fucked up. Like, didn't you just decide to, be in a committed relationship? And I was like, well, yeah, but, I didn't really trust that we were going to continue living into what we agreed upon in Costa Rica. And we hadn't been doing that for quite a while prior. So I felt kind of justified in exploring my options. And then the guy kept trying to connect, and I was like, I'm going to be at my boyfriend's house, so I was in this weird situation. So I really quickly came clean with him and just said, hey, listen, I just decided to give it a shot with this guy that I've been seeing. And I shouldn't have been open, and left it at that. And he was great and understanding and appreciated the response, and that was that. And then I guess at some point I told you about that, which I don't even remember telling you about it.
Yeah.
Because I thought that might be better to just keep to myself. But a couple weeks ago, I guess I was I was here by myself. You were doing a thing with Judy, which was really sweet. And then you had like these old movies on with your ex-wife and your kids, and you were sharing all these stories with me. And I don't know, I was just having sort of a moment of my own jealousy, just in a kind of abstract way. And I had a little, texty thing with the guy, and he's like, just checking in, like, are you still with the boyfriend? And
this is like a year later, right? So they just came in, the text in.
Yeah,
from the same
and it's
guy,
a work thing.
right?
So there was a legitimate reason to have the initial conversation.
Sure.
But so in my kind of passive aggressive feeling a little jealous, I sort of just worked that into the conversation. Like I thought, oh, let me just remind him that there are still people out there interested in me. And, it all sort of blew up in my face, and you got really, it turned into a really kind of big deal, which I didn't expect. And it wasn't a big deal. I haven't seen the guy, hung out with the guy. I don't have any intention of it. I was just sort of, I needed to remind you that I have options.
And for me, it came out of nowhere, right? And so then I just kind of went into my jealousy, right? I mean, it was just like, I'm not even saying I'm justified in it, and definitely didn't handle it well, but but I definitely got jealous. It was a thing, and we don't really experience that a whole lot with each other, I don't think. Right?
No, not too much anymore. I really think and that's kind of part of the conversation we're trying to have is choosing, not to go down that road and choosing not to pick apart the other person's little minuscule behaviors or I'll see you text a lot, you have a lot of things. I mean, I'm on my phone a lot, scrolling around or doing whatever I'm doing, and there's a time when I can be, your phone lights up and I'm kind of like looking over your shoulder or something. And
it's still gratifying to be like when my phone I get a ring at like 10:30 at night or it lights up and I'm just like, I have nothing to worry about.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, and I think this is natural. I think it doesn't matter if you've been together for a short term or if you've been together for a long time. People carry these kinds of behaviors and relationships out in their relationships. Sometimes always, right? I mean, I can honestly say I know people who still to this day like to fight and make up and project jealousy as a way of getting attention.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So,
and in my case, I think that was probably it, right? Like, I mean, I feel foolish about being jealous over it. It triggered me. I was honestly triggered, and we were in a whole bunch of other tensions of pandemic anyway. But at that moment, for everything, I was blindsided. Which is, didn't know where it was coming from. And since then, we talked about why you'd be feeling that and why you would do that, and how that's like a and you admitted up to it. I mean, that was what was so cool. I mean, and that's the powerful part is that like you didn't leave me hanging like I'm just the shit show here and an asshole. I mean, you leveled up and admitted up to enough to kind of give it all air and take ownership, so we both could kind of walk through it a little bit more gracefully.
Yeah, I think that was sort of the solution. Was initially, I don't even know that I realized what my motive was. When I was mentioning it.
Initially, you were just being super nice to me while I was being an asshole. I mean, that's kind of how it looked.
I was trying to.
You were literally just like, okay, honey, well, you're obviously in a really shitty place and being a real asshole, and I'm just going to be really nice. And I was in it still while she was being really nice until she started to withdraw that niceness, and then I was kind of like, well, okay, what the fuck's going on? And it blew up, and we both got to walk through it, and like I said, it's not the kind of person I want to be, and as you said, what you kind of got your motive, got to catch up on that. Sorry to interrupt that thought. But.
No, I think it's just, I didn't gaslight you and go crazy like, oh my God, how dare you care that I texted someone, a work thing, like you're crazy and you're too jealous. I kind of owned up and said, I think maybe I was feeling a little insecure and maybe my motives were a little passive aggressive and I just wanted to, throw that little jab in there. So I think that really helped the situation. And there was quite a bit of other things going on, that didn't have to do with you and I that were a little stressful at that moment. So it was
on edge in any way.
I don't think we blew up just over a stupid text message.
No, it was kind of all cumulative. Right. It just happened to be our scene.
It was to be the straw that broke the camel's back or something.
Exactly. Although, again, I got to say, through kind of breakdown comes breakthroughs again. It sounds so cliche, but I mean, for me, at least, like I'm so much more out of the nervous body, not just also because a lot of that other stuff, as we said, kind of moved itself on, but just even with you and I, when you kind of look at yourself and laugh at that particular message of jealousy, knowing that that's all very innocent and that it was all very typical, and there was nothing, there's no, that I just picked that you had a motive. It wasn't the who it was or how it happened or whatever. It was like I picked up on the motive and my hypersensitivity, right? And that's what I went for, like a wolf, like a cornered wolf. And thankfully we both calmed down and took our time and made time to walk through it. And from there, I think, what has flushed out, in our conversations is there's kind of a radical acceptance or just plain up acceptance, right? That we have to kind of start to buy into about our relationship with another partner, right? And that trust is really, it's so often people say trust is earned, right? But I think you kind of choose it in a relationship and accept that you've made the right choice is kind of what's been coming up for us, right? And that, there's valid reasons to have jealousy issues, there's valid reasons to have trust issues. But again, once you make a choice to love somebody or to commit to a relationship, I don't know that you can sit there and start to make certain that that person is worthy of your trust.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've been talking about that a lot, is trying to avoid the behaviors of, teach me, show me how I'm wrong, let me kind of, you got to prove yourself to me. That I think what we've decided, and most people probably already know this, but exactly, yeah, is that, the better option is to just choose to trust, choose to think the best, choose to assume that the person is in their integrity and is not doing anything shady and is not, messing with your head, and not try to be, what I've done in the past is like, I love all these detective shows and I think I'm smart. And, Gavin said it to me one time. He's like, oh, you'll find out, like I fancy myself a detective. Like, you're not going to pull one over on me. Like, I will figure out what's going on. I will read into this or read into that. And I'm not the type to say anything. Like, I'm not the confrontational, where were you? What are you doing? Like, I've got too much pride for that, but I will definitely try to do my own covert research. And
that's what makes you so lethal in a relationship. Really,
and I don't forget.
I've learned this, exactly. So yeah,
I'm like,
it's kind of making it easier for me to accept my own self too.
Yeah,
like,
I will.
I'm not going to take that chance.
Actually, you told me, I don't usually forget. So
yeah, last November you mentioned at this one time at
right?
the party.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But better get your story straight here with Michelle. That's for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'll fact check it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I think, we're just kind of talking about and going over that the better method is to not self-sabotage our relationship, or is to not create some sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, is to, just assume the best and maybe be naive and blindly go forward. And then you get into the thing of, oh, I'm going to be the idiot who was the last to know and whatever. But I think what we've decided is I'd rather be the idiot that was the last to know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I can summarize, one of the points here on the show on that is that, if you will, that's what we're choosing. I'd rather be the idiot. I mean, even though I say, I don't want to be the last to know, Michelle. You best tell me before you. And it's like, yeah, okay, we can offer each other all that, but we can't, we don't know what that guarantee is for the other person.
Yeah.
Right? We can only guarantee our own part in it. And so I would rather to just choose, lean in, not be jealous, not be, an asshole, and just not have all that nervous body in the relationship. We get along so good anyway.
Yeah.
Why not flow? Why not enjoy it? Right? If it is about prolonging it and making it joyous, then there's not much room for, doubting each other.
Right.
Often, and then wondering, how and when that other person's going to hurt you,
mm-hmm.
and try to get ahead of it. Right. I've said that in the past, how I can yuck my yum by trying to get ahead of it.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about that a little bit in relationship with trust, is that when you have a backstory, when we've talked about, we've overshared.
Yes.
And we've wondered about, taking inventory on how much of that is actually working in our favor versus how much of that is kind of had at least my male psychotic mind go off on, but for no other reason than it's my male psychotic mind. Nothing, not to say you did anything ever wrong. It's just that as we get these stories and we make them up and we embellish them of our own making, right? We have to say, well, okay, I accept that person in entirety, but then you can have these moments of like, but
they did
this, and therefore
don't make
this,
it all
and
about me.
I know you have way more reason to do that with
I'm
me.
not going to share your stories on the air.
I'm not sharing yours either. I'm just saying, like, we both partners will always go in with, if they did this in the past, maybe they do that to me, or
right.
Right. So that just to kind of bring out the but part of it. Is it that there is no but as well, right? Like that's the acceptance part, is you
mm-hmm.
gotta be like, that was then, this is now,
mm-hmm.
right? By having your past experiences, of any kind, or those should be I'm not gonna say should, but I mean, I think I found them to be more valuable, over time in our relationship than to withhold.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's good that we have the information, that we have an understanding of each other and our past and our rights and our wrongs and what we have to offer and where we might be inclined to screw up. But yeah, when you have the information, it's definitely a little more difficult to put it out of your head sometimes.
You had to do that way more than me, right? So I mean, I put you on a pedestal for that. As you know, I came in with some not so pretty backstory, and it wasn't the catch of the day, let's say, right? And so, you had to kind of really make some clear choices, but that's the whole point, is that now you have chosen, right? And I chose, and even when we chose, we were kind of still like, is this real? And that's where, this little thing went. And at that time I was going back and, closing things down, if you remember, and we had our little moments of there too, right? Yeah. And so, but now that we've chosen, I think it doesn't make sense that we're each other's adversaries, right? We now have kind of realized that it makes sense that we do for each other and do for the other.
Yeah, I think it definitely doesn't serve us to walk around trying to poke holes in the other person's story, or figure out where the other person is going to wrong us, and all that's going to do is get in our own way for any chance of having a healthy, happy relationship.
And then, we always, want to kind of look up the opposite of that. So what's one of the stories that you can say there where it was like, there was a lot of jealousy in your relationship, and it didn't, that it had a, radical or, kind of negative effect on the relationship in general? Well, not so subtle, so to speak.
Yeah, I've had lots of those on my end and on the other person's end. And lots of, dramatics with ex-boyfriends, demanding, just the validation of stories. I had an ex-boyfriend who, he was just super jealous. He was, constant phone calls, where are you? What are you doing? He would, go on and make me take photos. Like, we didn't live in the same town, so we'd be on the phone, and this is FaceTime. I think I had a BlackBerry at the time, and he would make me. Could you send photos on a BlackBerry?
Yeah, those little small ones.
Yeah. So, he would make me take a photo of your driveway right now to show him that there was no other car in my driveway.
Right. That's like the extreme jealousy and possessive love.
Oh my God.
Is the relationship, right?
And it was,
there's more to it, but it's all pervasive in it.
It was just insulting. And I didn't have the healthy and strong boundaries. All I wanted to do was prove that I wasn't doing anything. So I would engage in it, and I would send him the pictures, and it was just never enough. We were living together, and I went out with a friend one afternoon, middle of the day, when driving around in his Ferrari. And I came home, and my boyfriend was freaking out, and he knew I was going, and he knew the friend and everything. And he went on a rage and started going through my dirty clothes and pulling dirty underwear out of the laundry and accusing me of sleeping with other people. And I'm like, what? And it was insane.
Yeah, that's a good side of the spectrum, right? That's part of that spectrum. Yeah. And that's just, there's many more of those tales.
There's many more. Yeah. I had another ex-boyfriend who was, would steal my phones, go through my phones. I think I had 4 or 5 phones thrown at the wall and broken. I was always going back to the AT&T store, someone broke my phone. And I myself have been quite guilty of that too. And I've had multiple relationships where I had the other people's email passwords and could read their emails. And I found out quite a few things that, I felt really guilty about after the fact. I had one ex-boyfriend who was, we were off and on, the phone breaking one. And he and I were, off and on and back together and this and that. And I found out in his email that he had been kind of trying to connect with men on Craigslist for some, Yeah.
Right.
You know
So
what?
he's a super jealous one of you.
Right.
Like constantly got you under the magnifying glass, and all the while he's got, his own story,
Yeah.
going on in the background.
Yeah, and
Right.
I-
That
you
is
know.
even, maybe a little bit more off of spectrum of what you guys
Of-
thought you were signing
of
up
what
for,
I
of a
thought I
monogamous
was-
relationship with a
Yeah.
heterosexual person. Right. And so, and maybe that's some of the truth too, the kind of the jealousy stuff and the trust stuff too, right? As we tug and war of it in different parts of our relationships. I mean, some of us tumble into relationship for many different reasons, whether it be just pure romantic chemistry, business, whatever. So, we don't always like make this choice,
Yeah.
we kind of just, we're in it, and it's a circumstantial thing.
Yeah.
And then once you're there, you're kind of like being in preschool, you're thrown into a playground with a whole bunch of kids you don't know who are all raised in different ways. Well, now you're living with a man or a woman, they've been raised different ways, and you're trying to figure out and navigate all that. And in some cases, I think, a lot of people are either having these trust issues and this jealousy is because they're valid, and they're both, either doing something or one of them is.
Sure.
And so they're showing their ugly face, right? And others, I've heard that, the other one person doesn't feel worthy of the other person, right? Or there is worthiness issues on both parts. And so they kind of are sabotaging those relationships, or fearful
fear of
those
intimacy.
fear of intimacy, right? And so they're going to get found out, and not so much that they're doing something wrong with somebody else, but maybe other flaws of themselves, and so back into, you kind of enter into relationship. It is, it's going to be vulnerable, right? It's going to be an open book, but a lot of times this is I guess I want to say the shield. We use jealousy and fighting and,
Sure.
And all this storytelling and this drama,
Yeah.
to kind of keep a safe distance from all this intimate shit.
Right.
Would you say that there's some accuracy to that, or that you've experienced some of that or seen that anywhere? Or am I just coming up with all that?
I think so. I think a lot of my crazy drama on both sides was sort of valid. They were relationships that were off and on. We were not maybe both committed to the greater good of the partnership. Everybody was sort of out for themselves in their own way. So while the feelings were valid, the actions were not valid. That me reading someone else's email and knowing that information, at the time I felt validated, and felt like it was like, oh, how dare this person be, telling me that we're, in this relationship trying to work it out, and yet they're trying to hook up with men on Craigslist on the side. Like, I felt completely validated. And after the fact, now I'm horrified by my behavior, like that, whether or not I was in or out of the relationship, that was not my information to know, right? That was somebody's, whatever they were going through, whatever they were doing. And it was absolutely not my information. And I feel really bad about doing it. And I used to think like, well, I'm best, I deserve to know what I'm dealing with. And so if I have to, if you're dumb enough to give me your email password, then, you should assume that I might use it at some point. And that's really immature.
Yeah.
And I definitely, going forward, like with you, I'm really trying to, not engage in those behaviors and to just trust and take you at your word. And, there have been times like right now in your office drawer, like there's letters from ex-girlfriends, and I went in there one day and I was legitimately just looking for a pen, and I could just right there on top. And, I get that complete feeling, like that adrenaline rush in my chest. And I'm like, ugh, and you weren't home. And it was kind of a relationship that you hadn't really shared with me exactly, what happened, and that I was a little curious about. And like, I haven't read them. They're still in the drawer, I think. And but I went through that whole struggle of like, okay, he's not here. Like, maybe I deserve the inside information of what I'm dealing with and what's in there. It looked like a long letter.
That's super big of you. I pray that I have the same willpower.
I'm proud of myself.
You should be. Yeah.
But I
had totally forgotten that those were in there,
Right?
No,
I absolutely haven't read them, and I did go back and look at the date
because
I was
glad you at
wondering,
least
like,
did
is this
that,
recent,
right? Like,
or
totally,
is this
At least you got that out of there.
And it was old, and I'd forgotten about it, and I think that's the healthier way, right? Because I don't need to know all the information.
Yeah, there is kind of a moral ground of valuing each other's privacy,
Yes.
right? Like, and like you were saying before, like you're kind of, it's not just maturity. There's kind of a moral ground,
Yeah.
right? And I want to value your privacy. And we've talked about that before of like what can we own of our own versus what we need to bring and be transparent in. And hopefully we're always being at our highest self in that. That's when we're going to feel more comfortable, right?
Yeah.
We're going to trust it, and our gut's not going to be cluing in, or trying to get it. So. But, you have a right to your privacy in your life, and I have a right to mine.
100%.
That doesn't change in relationship. Right?
No.
And that's not a trust issue, right? That's just like an agreement of of how we want to honor the other person, and expect them to do the right thing if they're operating out of agreement.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And again, you could want to get your backstory. It doesn't make you less curious, right?
Right.
And I've done it in the past. I've read the letter in the past,
I have
right?
too.
And it wasn't information I probably should have had.
Right.
And then I used it against the person, which was shitty of me to do, right? Especially long after the fact.
Yeah.
And, again, was that, asshole with, I don't know what my motive was then, but it didn't, it showed up as jealousy and lack of respect. And
Sure.
It wasn't the right thing to do.
It's a power thing a little bit, it's just give me all the inside information so I know exactly what I'm dealing with, so I know how to better operate in this relationship and keep myself safe, which is that's kind of what we're talking about, is the wrong, if I'm constantly trying to keep myself safe and protected, then I think I'm in the wrong relationship, is I guess what we're kind of trying to come to.
Yeah. And I can say for myself personally, I feel like I've gone through a tipping point here, just even through this last round, and being able to even talk about it throughout the period of time here and whatever, right? Like I'm terribly trusting right now of you, just to be clear. And it's enjoyable, right?
I have you right where I want you.
You do. You really have. You've done the stopwatch and hypnotized me. And so I am happy to be hypnotized. And I'd like to stay in that place, right? And also I not just like how it feels, and the love language of it all, right? And the comfort of it that we all kind of seek in relationship, but it doesn't feel like it has anything to do with trust. Like I said, it feels like that can be that trust game can be, a real puzzle that you can, pull out. And I think that's something you just come and check in with, how am I trusting in this partner? How's it feeling? Right. But it's not a day to day or week to week or month to month. That's a given. And and so not only that though, I like who I am. Like I want to laugh at little jabs and funny jokes, or I want to see you get attention and go out and, we laugh. We can do that when I know you're going out to the construction site. You're the prettiest girl on the construction site and nice little dress. Know the guys are going to whistle. And of course that doesn't bother me at all. I should be happy about that. And so more of that for me, please. Yeah. And that comes easier for me when I'm not picking you apart or picking apart any of the possible ways that we could, make wrong by this relationship. And you're not deserving of that. Like I said, it's insulting for somebody to do that to another person, especially when it's not merited.
Yeah, it's very insulting when you're not doing anything. It's like, who do you think I am? Like, you really think I'm going to, be hooking up with the guy in the bathroom at the grocery store or something? It's just, yeah.
And some guys, we think that, right? I just want to make that clear. Like, we're just like, wait, no, that's the image. Yeah.
No, some women too. And it's figuring out, we were talking about that too, figuring out that line of, what is appropriate and what's not appropriate. And, it falls on us. It falls on me to make sure that you're comfortable, and to not say that you should just blindly trust me in any given situation,
right?
Because how dare you think that I would do something? There are valid situations where it's like, no, I probably shouldn't put myself in that situation. And you're right to be concerned. And so we try to limit those in a reasonable way.
Absolutely. Exactly. Yeah.
Like I said, you can, go to the bachelor party with your buddies, but, you don't need to be hanging out at the strip club every night after hours or something and be, best friends texting all the strippers every day or whatever it is. Just made up examples.
There's all kinds of recipes for disaster that, it's that you don't blind trust if the other person's doing that, right? That's not a fair ask, right? So yeah, but you said another thing. It's kind of our job to make the other person comfortable, and that was another thing that you brought up in some of the reading you were doing, is that trust is also built in these little sliding doors. Can you speak to that a little bit more? Just, it's not always the big things, or it's trust can be also earned in these kinds of small gestures, or what was that about?
Yeah, I was just reading a bunch of stuff about how we build trust, and that a lot of times we think it is these big, infidelity things or cheating, or I guess infidelity and cheating are the same thing, but it's the, that we build trust on a day-to-day basis slowly. The little moments where we choose to act in our partner's interest above our own self-interest, or, where we show that we're committed to the relationship rather than, more committed to ourself, and, where can I win and where do you lose? And, not that, but how are we, turning towards each other is the word they were using, on a day-to-day basis. And I think the more that we do that in our day-to-day living, the more trust we build. So the better foundation that we have, these little things that might be a little concerning are not such a big deal. When you've built a solid, stable relationship, it's like, yeah, no, go on a boys' weekend or a girls' weekend, or yes, you can have a platonic friend of the other sex and it's not a big deal. But if we don't have that foundation, if we haven't built that, if I don't think that you're acting in my best interest or in our relationship's best interest, then those things could be completely, it could drive me crazy, So yeah, I think just remembering, on the day-to-day to recognize, because sometimes we forget that. I know I do, that you do all these little things like buy me chocolate croissants, or, have my parents over for dinner, or make sure we're stocked up in the house, or put lights on my bike for me, or do, little thoughtful things, or listen to me when I'm talking and being annoying and keeping you up at night, or, whatever they are, that all those little things they build trust over time. So I think it's important to recognize them.
That's awesome. I think that's a great way to conclude the show, right? And I think that summarizes itself in a way of lean in, right? Like, I guess that's what we're saying overall, right? You lean into the ugly we're doing on the show too, but you also lean into the, when in doubt, let's go the high road. Let's expect the best, right? And lean in more fearlessly. I don't know how else to say it. Right?
Well,
maybe lean in.
Lean in, or what's the word that they use? Love. Love fearlessly. Or love recklessly.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think. Mm-hmm. And one of the terms, and when I was reading about, how people define trust, most of them were pretty, what I would expect, integrity and reliability and those things. But one of the terms that I didn't really expect was generosity. And that, when you do something, like, I can be generous to assume that your motives are good, that even if you fall short, it may be because you didn't notice or you didn't realize, or that, I don't want to jump to assuming the worst about you. And I think that just sets us up for a much better relationship. And I think if we're stuck in that, always assuming the worst, always trying to find, to catch somebody in a lie, or determine, oh, you didn't do this or you didn't do that, or, find the bad motive.
And you covered that really well linearly, right? There's like kind of the first piece that was, you got to be in a relationship that isn't causing all that madness, right? It isn't justified, jealousy and stuff, right? So let's assume that, that's kind of worked itself out, right? And now you're actually in a relationship where it's still new, right? And we're still conditioned by all these, past experiences.
Sure.
And we're still uncovering. And so, so you kind of covered that, and well, now I know I can kind of, lean in to take this high road, and trust the relationship. And then when they start doing all those small for you things and those start adding up, it's almost like comfy pajamas. You start to now kind of fold into this kind of third phase that you're saying, right? Where it's like, it's easier to make these assumptions. You don't have to like make them every call or every moment.
Right,
like
right.
You can still have the moments where you're like, well, is he and whatever, or is she, right? But most of the time I'm finding, right, right? That
Yeah.
It's much easier to assume that they're not.
Yeah.
And for me, at least, like my nervous system isn't going there hardly
Right.
at all, right? I can't speak for you, but and hopefully it gets easier. I hope that's
Exactly.
what we're trying to do. Like,
I think that's
we've
what
talked
we're
about
trying
that
to
in the other
do
shows, is like these little things matter.
over time.
And reiterating that again here is that those little things are those little trust building tools
Yeah.
that allow for a lot of this other stuff to kind of get out of the way of, prolonging a relationship and being happy in it.
Yeah. I think it is a constant choosing,
right?
To not constant. It's not like a daily struggle, but in those little moments, when I'm like picking up your laundry and stuff falls out of your pockets, right? I mean, I could start like, what's this from? And where were you? And what were you doing when I wasn't here? And, where are these receipts from? And those things cross my mind, but I sort of make a conscious decision to like, I don't want to go digging around there. 'Cause one, I don't, I'm going to assume I'm not going to find anything. And then if I do find something, it's not going to be probably something that, information that I want to know. And I don't, well, wait, that's not really what I meant.
Looks like you just went down the trust rabbit hole for a
No,
second.
not at all. No,
I
have to assume that there isn't any information there. And I don't want to live my life trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
right. Like
right,
that is just a
right.
wasted effort.
Yeah.
It's pointless.
Yeah.
I'd rather be blindsided, by the information. I mean, we both understand we could both cheat on each other, betray each other, let each other down.
Well,
I mean,
and
we
just
all
to
know that's
put it
a
in
possibility.
context, right? It's like I don't think we're crazy living that experience out ourselves, but like Michelle said, she watches lots of detective shows, right? There's like lots of this criminal investigation. It's always the husband who kills the wife, right? So it's also in your nature, right, to be like spooked at anything, right? And so it's also nature, right, to so just throwing that out there as it doesn't go away. You can continue to
and I need to figure things out. I like knowing, I like being right and sometimes being validated, but I don't want to be thinking the worst and then be validated. Like
right.
That's not what I'm going for. I'd rather think the best, and then should something happen that I don't like, I think it'll be a more pleasant relationship if I, assume the best, and then
when it goes to shit, then at least you had a good time while it lasted.
Exactly. And at least I didn't, I didn't get in our way. I didn't create the self-fulfilling prophecy that you're going to hurt me, you're going to leave me, you're going to betray me, you're going to let me down. It's like praying for bad things to happen, or worrying about things that I don't have any control over anyway. So I might as well give it the best shot that I can, and just relax, enjoy, and assume everything is good.
From your lips to God's ears, you heard it here first, people. Wish us luck, right? A year in, you've heard, we need the luck, and so I pray that we both get to enjoy and reap the benefits of that, and we don't have any reason to have that kind of betrayal trust over time. I think we're going to live into that, and I feel confident of that, and I'm enjoying it. So, but life happens, and let's see where we're at another year from now. I love you. Thank you for being here.
All right,
we'll do this again. Mixed messages. Mixed messages.